Welcome to Don't Be Caged by Your Age, Nina. I'm so happy you're here to share your insights, stories, and pro aging advice with our listeners. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so happy to be here. I'm honored.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to have you on the show and also so delighted that we met as one does nowadays virtually. We see each other's incredible body of work and listeners. Nina is passionate about helping writers find their voice and reclaim the hooligan kid spirit that most folks have buried under an adult veneer. Nina, please share your age and where you're hailing from.
I am proudly 64 years old, and I don't tell people that very often. So, being here with Andy, I am on a new dedication in my life to being proud of my age. And yes, I hail from Cleveland Heights, Ohio, 44118.
Yay, Midwesterners are the best. Just saying,
Are you,
everyone.
where are you from?
I'm right here in Boston.
Oh, okay.
So, New England has its own little quirks, but we have fun with all our different states here. And thank you, Nina, for being willing to age out loud. It's not easy, it's a movement. We've been so indoctrinated to feel shame around the aging. In fact, in episode 20, I interviewed Lori Raskin, who has this great book called Help, We Can't Stop Aging. A lot of really fun poems and artwork, and it's so true. We've gotta learn to laugh and go deeper in our radical self-love for our age. And speaking of radical self-love, your origin story, Nina, is so beautiful and so powerful about how you tried to write the way you were being taught to write. And I know many listeners can relate to that perfection, which of course is the death of creativity. Please share with everyone what led you to find your true voice as a writer.
I always knew I was a writer ever since I was young, but I it felt like such a vulnerable act that I kept it to myself quite often. And it was easier for me. I became a professional modern dancer, a bass player. I did all kinds of other things creatively, but my writing felt like something I needed to keep for me. And when I took writing classes, I would shake, sometimes I would cry when I would leave the class. My inner critic was so loud, and I think writing is so close to your soul that I felt like I had to run and hide again. But then that became untenable. That became too painful to keep that from myself and others. But I also knew that when I wrote, I felt all those other cultural voices coming in of like, you can't say it that way. You can't write it that way. You have to follow these perfectionistic standards and also literary standards. And the literary world has a lot of rules. And I thought, well, this does not feel good. I am not in the flow. I am trying to control my writing. I need to stop. This is torture. So I quit. And then a few years later, I decided to sort of crawl back, but on my own terms. I was not taking classes. I started experimenting. I started playing. I started writing really badly, quote unquote, allowing myself to break all the rules, to be a hooligan kid spirit, like bring my kid back to my writing. And then I found this writing group in this little musty, dusty Seattle cafe. And this 85-year-old woman, Marilyn, was running the group. And all we did was sit around and she'd give us these goofy prompts and we would write and no feedback, just clapping for each other. And all of a sudden, I felt like what I call the top of my head open up, which is why I call my workshops writing from the top of your head. Emily Dickinson said it should feel like the top of your head is off, that it's poetry. So everything that wanted to come in, all the crazy junk, all of the beautiful stuff, like I suddenly felt like I was not forcing my writing anymore. and I was laughing and I had found joy. So, long story
Oh,
short, that was my unwinding of all of that crap.
oh my gosh, listeners, is your heart as full as mine? I mean, wow. First of all, thank you for having the courage to break the mold and bend the rules because same thing with art, right? People have been told you have to express your art this way. You have to hold the paintbrush that way or the pen. And same thing with writing in order to be bona fide and legit in the literary world. And I'm just going to do a quick shout out to Amy Ferris. If anybody wants to hop on Facebook, another great example of breaking all the rules with writing. And Nina, this is just so wonderful. And did it lead to your writing and getting published as a result?
Yeah, in Marilyn's wacky little class, these crazy little stories started coming through me. And I realized I had a book on the way, a book of short stories. It went on to be a finalist in the Indie Fab Forward Reviews Book of the Year awards. I know, for short stories.
That
So
had that had to be so validating,
yeah,
right?
it really was. It really was. And I started performing those stories. It's called Somewhere in a Town You Never Knew Existed Somewhere. And I was purposely bad in the book. Like I create literary misdemeanors. I change point of view. I swear. I do all kinds of things that you're not supposed to do as a writer. And yet it still won this self-published award. I self-published because I realized in the literary world, this is my first book. It breaks a lot of rules. So
Well, and an editor, you don't want an editor getting a hold of your writing under those circumstances. And I love this name of your book, the title so much. Somewhere in a town you never knew existed somewhere. Oh, and also I loved the fact that you said you created and caused literary misdemeanors.
yeah, yeah.
Broke the law with your literary misdemeanors.
Yes, I've been in hiding ever since. I am. Don't tell anyone where I live.
And by giving yourself permission to write in a meaningful way for you,
Yeah.
you then, I imagine, were able to tap into others who not only wanted to hear your words, celebrate your words, absorb your writing, but also you gave them permission to have some literary misdemeanors of their own and break the rules.
Yeah.
Yes?
I think the word permission is so important. I work with a lot of MFA dropouts or people wounded by MFA programs. I work with older people who got married instead of following their writing career that they had so dreamed of. But I think the word permission is exactly what I help people with. I taught a group of sixth graders once, and the teacher told me at the beginning, she said, you know, little Johnny, who was sitting right up in front of me, first class, she said, he hates to write. And I was like, okay, let's get Johnny now. So my first prompt to the class was write as badly as you possibly can. Make it boring, make it, you know, if somebody hears it, they're going to be like, that's the worst writing I've ever heard. Oh my God, they're such an embarrassment that they're going to be shamed forever. Little Johnny looked at me like, "Oh my god, you let me out of jail." 'Cause my whole life, everyone's telling me to be good, to be perfect, to do it right, even when you're young. And so he started writing front and back of these notebook pages, 8 pages. He'd throw them in the air after he was done with one. So there are all of these flying papers, and he had the most glee on his face, and it was a beautiful breakthrough for him. And then the whole class said to their teacher, Jenny, they said, "Teacher Jenny, can we do this every day?" And so I think that if you harness that energy, if you give that kid spirit back to adults, they start actually enjoying the process again and exploring. And don't we all need that as creatives? Like, not
Absolutely.
goals. Yeah.
Yeah, and your bio says you're a Kaizen Muse creativity coach? I don't even know if I said that right. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, it's Kaizen Muse. Kaizen is a Japanese word that means continuous improvement through the small steps. So it is a big practice in Japan. So, at any rate, as coaches, we are taught to use the small steps, keep the fight or flight from happening in creatives. But also, muse is, of course, the muse. Where does our creativity come from? But especially, we have life coaches. Life coaches often work with business executives. Working with creatives as a creativity coach is a whole different ball game because creatives are often very sensitive. They're sensitive to criticism. They're sensitive to being told what to do. They don't like rules deep down, but they like boundaries. They like deadlines. There's a whole kind of thing that creatives need that is very different from being a life coach. So,
Ah, I love that. Thank you. And thank you for the correct pronunciation. Kaizen Muse, right?
yeah, you can
And
say it however you want.
but this is so important. It kind of reminds me of the artist's way, where you can do your morning pages and just let anything top of head come out on the pages and just let it flow and let it flow and let it flow. And as a result, you're going to tap into some meaningful work for yourself
Yeah.
without the inner critic tearing it apart. And do you want to use that word? Is that the right adjective? Was that the right noun? Was that the right structure you wanted that sentence? And then, of course, comparing yourself to literary giants and greats that are successful. That'll never get you anywhere. And writing, yes, it's for an audience, but at the end of the day, it's also for you, the author, right?
Yeah, I think often when we go to a class for creativity, we think of what's the product that I'm going to come out with. And often in my classes, my students will say, but you're all about process. And I say, yes, that's right. Just like an improvisation class where you just say yes to everything that comes to you and you use it as fodder for what you're building. You know, in my classes, there's a whole lot of attention to practice and process. And if we love what we're doing or we're having fun, we're much more likely to continue and succeed.
Right.
So, therefore, getting the joy of the process into yourself, you actually innately, inevitably improve.
So, have you seen ageism show up for folks who want to be a writer? And because, so much indoctrinated beliefs come in, right? I mean, so many of them will say, I'm too old to be a writer. Well, hello, Mary Oliver, anyone? I mean, my gosh. What are your thoughts? What did you experience around ageist limitations on what folks and yourself could do and would do during this wonderful Renaissance period between the ages of 55 and 80?
Yeah. I have people in my classes who are the early stages of dementia. They are finding such joy in their words, they're writers, and we all deserve, as we get older again, to be in that joy of the process. I have a student who, in her 80s, published a book called Growing Up Mad in the South, Bonnie Shell, and I really feel like it gives people a new lease on life. The Rolling Stones song, "Lose Your Dreams and You Will Lose Your Mind."
Right.
So, I think, yes, that but there are many, many trips around aging and around feeling too old, and there's beautyism in our culture, which is so prevalent now with
Yeah.
Instagram, and it's kind of a national disease, just as perfectionism it's really an epidemic, and I think as older, wise artists come forward and are not afraid of being who they are in the world, then we will show younger people that this stigma is not something to be ashamed of, not something to shame others about. I've done stand up comedy, and often older comics will make fun of themselves. And I think "Oh, please don't do that." Or a lot of women, especially, like, even in my 40s, I had friends who were like, "Are you becoming invisible yet? We're becoming invisible. Oh my god." And it's like, why? Why are we talking to each other like that? That is not how we need to talk to each other. And it's
And
and
to our beautiful selves. And we
yeah,
talked about this in episode 13 with Sarah Hart, who said one of the best things that you can do to help defeat and to solve ageism is to stop not only using that language, de-emphasizing the ageist beliefs that are out there that are so limiting, but to stop buying the cards that are demeaning and diminishing and belittling of folks over 60. It
yeah,
really has become a movement for us right now, Nina. And your writing is also helping so many people tap in to more of what they have to give. And this idea that because the clock strikes midnight on a milestone age, you're done. No, the world always needs more of you, whatever that is and whatever that looks like. In writing, I am sure there are plenty of listeners right now going, wow, I never thought of first writing badly. I never thought that I could move forward in a practice and a process that will help me be more fully expressed. Share a little with how you work with folks. When did you start having workshops and using this as a vocation toward your own ikigai, right?
yeah,
But and then share how folks can sign up for workshops and
yeah.
get into their own writing process and practice.
So, I think, again, one of the gifts of getting older is you start really realizing what your body of work is and what you have learned and what your wisdom is and how you will pass that along and that you actually have the experience to do that. Uh, and so when I was in my 50s and I unwound all of these blocks to my writing process, I decided that I wanted to pass that process along to other writers, but I thought I should become a creativity coach if there is such a thing to also pass along those strategies and tools. So I did find this creativity coaching program and I combined that with all of the ways in which I unwound my own process as a writer. And so I developed something called writing from the top of your head. I had to call it that. I just knew I had to call it that. And I had a group of 8 students here in Asheville, North Carolina, that attended my first group, and they stayed with me over and over. 6 weeks became 8 to 10 rounds of the same people working with me, so I feel like they helped me develop this method. A lot of it has to do with if you go to my website, you'll see the stages you go through, each one sort of healing a different aspect of creative wounds and adding coaching tools to them. I have an online program, but I also teach live. I teach workshops and retreats. I do coaching. But at any rate, I just had the wild, crazy courage at one point where I was like, I have something to teach. And, I don't have an MFA, I've got a BA, but I have like a PhD in life, as an artist. And
Yeah.
so I
Well,
feel,
and it's a full circle moment because, as you said, you did modern dance and you played the bass and stand-up comic. I mean, you have this enormous body of creativity inside you,
yeah,
and what you're doing is using your own process and practice as a catalyst to help others tap into theirs without saying it has to look a certain way. You're asking them to tap into what is their full expression. And that is a journey. That is a process. You have to kind of go in and find out what that is. No one's going to hand it to you and say, oh, this is your type of creativity. And listeners, go to writingfromthetopofyourhead.com. Links are in the show notes, of course. And what I love is that has this wonderful call to action right at the top, and it says, curious if writing from the top of your head is a good fit? Schedule a quick 15-minute call to see if this work is for you. So there's the online program, there's a group coaching, there's a writing workshops and retreats. Do you stay local for the retreats? Where do you go? What happens on a retreat on a retreat?
You can say it.
Can I get that out, everybody? Retreat. Great. And what happens then? Do you go places? Do you hibernate for a while as a group? Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Well, my next retreat, which I am so excited about, is going to be in Scotland in June 2025, June 10th through the 20th. We'll be staying in a little town called Dunkeld, which is an hour outside of Edinburgh. And it's through Traceless Tours, which is beautiful tour company, only does Scottish tours. She has mostly done tours with musicians, and so this is her first foray into having a writer's retreat. So I will be teaching writing from the top of your head, but we will also go to Beatrix Potter land and we will be touring and where Shakespeare and Burnham Woods and we'll be in places where we can write outdoors, but we'll also just be having fun in, the local culture there.
Right. And the magic of nature that's so
Yeah.
beautiful in that part of the world and can be inspirational for bringing those words out. Have
Yeah.
you done a retreat like this before where you actually people needed passports?
Not passports. So Raven Sinclair, who is running again 27 years of experience, she's got it all down. But this was quite a long journey to go to Scotland. And I've been there. I love it there. So this is exciting. I did a few Asheville retreats prior, and I've done retreats in like Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Sure.
But yeah, this is passport material.
I know it's very, very exciting. It's a real commitment and a bond will happen for all of those who sign up. Do you have a number that you of folks that you'll stop taking applications for or
Yeah, up to 18.
up to
So
18?
we're well on our way. So if you're interested, the deadline is the end of August. Although if we aren't quite full, then we can sneak a few more people in. But you can go to tracelesstours.com and look at the specialty retreats. And maybe I'll give you a link to
Oh, that would be great.
talk about all of it. So
Yeah, that's so exciting. And for those who want to stay local and want to do it online and feel tuned in and tapped in, is it expensive to do a writing workshop with you or a group coaching program with you?
I always have scholarships for people in need, but I feel like my workshops are very affordable. I have a local workshop at Story Parlor Asheville, which is a wonderful venue. I think it's 350 for 6 weeks.
My gosh, that's very affordable.
Yeah, yeah, and then I have an online writer's woodshed, which is even less money, but it's a wonderful offer, and then I have my online program is 647
Yeah.
for 8 modules and plus 2 short coaching, ceremonies, so
Thank
yeah,
you for sharing that because a lot of times we want to do something, we're curious about doing something, but we wonder if we have the budget for it. And especially as we're aging, we're working with more perhaps limited funds than we are used to. So carving that out is so important. It's such an investment in yourself, your growth as an elder, your peace of mind, your full expression. And also, I just think working with a group, because I imagine it's intergenerational,
yeah,
right? You've got all ages in there. That is so important,
perfect.
not only for our Gen Zs and millennials, but for our boomers and Gen Xers to have that collaborative brain of intergenerational thoughts and wisdom and insights and points of view, perspectives. I love that, Nina. Thank you for having the courage to create a platform from which folks can grow and to bring your specific and unique type of writing practices and processes and prompts to help folks bring their beautiful brains into the equation and also be able to do something without the judgment of the proper way to write.
Yeah. I'll also add thank you, that was great, that I use gateless method feedback. I'm a gateless method facilitator, so
What does that mean?
There that's another whole other thing. It means, in short, that I only use positive feedback with writers, so when they read aloud, they feel really safe. Nobody is going to attack their writing, criticize it. Their fight or flight will not get triggered. They will feel safe. They will feel brave, comfortable. So I really, really value creating a safe space because otherwise it can be a free for all. It's not.
It is, and you started the conversation off talking about the vulnerability of writing. There's just something different about bringing words to paper. There's a little bit of the everlasting feeling to it, the evergreen nature of bringing words, but also when we were learning our ABCs and learning to write, we were given very clear guidelines on the right and wrong way to do it. And to dissolve that and throw it out of the window, and then right from the top of your head, you are the gift that keeps on giving, Nina.
Thank you. You're wonderful. I love what you're doing in the world, and thank you for giving me the courage to even say how old I am. And
It's so good. So, what advice as a 64-year-old woman, loud and proud, what advice do you have for folks who are seeking ways to thrive after the age of 60 and 65 and help dissolve those indoctrinated beliefs? What would you like them to tell themselves? The stories, right, that you'd like to have them share inside their head instead to calm down that inner critic.
we use anchors as a creativity coach, anchors and comebacks. And one of them that I love to use is "So what? I'll do it anyways." And there's a lot of great self talk and reframes that you can do that can help intercede. But I also had a father that lived to be 99 years old. And he was such an example to me because he actually claimed to be 28 his whole life, which was because he had a sense of humor. So I would say keep your sense of humor like Andy has. Andy, your sense of humor is so wonderful. Um,
Thank
yes. And also, my dad published his first book, his only book of his photographs and musings at age 96. And you can find it on Amazon. It's called Phil Hart Musings, and it's such a beautiful book. And so look for the examples in your life who are riding age with like a bronco with beauty. Marcel Marceau, I remember at my dentist's office when I was a little kid, there was a photo of him and he was older, but he was so beautiful, so present. So keep these beautiful examples in mind as we
you.
fight e-power.
Stay tuned into your hooligan kid, right? Create those misdemeanors and tell your story your way. Bring those thoughts to the world. And it's not 1 minute you're thinking about writing, and the next minute you're self publishing. It is a process. And so, working with Nina listeners, you have the opportunity in a very safe space with gateless feedback, which I am all about. I love that, something fierce. You can start working on what does that look like? And boy, prompts, everyone, is so important to have that creative thought process. Because when you're given a prompt, well, Nina, tell everybody what happens when you are given a prompt.
For me, I am very aware that when one is given a prompt, they might freak out. Like, oh my God, I have to write now. But a good prompt can evoke imagery or smells or sights or tastes, like this sensory world, the imagination. The more we cultivate that kid imagination that we all had that we might block, the more that we can bring that material onto the page, that vividness. But also, a lot of the prompts that I do are just 2 minutes just to bypass the freak out. So I might do 2 minutes on onion, 2 minutes on cry, put those two together for 5 minutes, so your creative mind, your curious mind has time to be individual process.
Right.
Yeah.
And as we age, the way we keep our minds agile
Yeah.
and our memories engaged and the loss of memory and dementia, we can push back more years when we try new things. And writing is a beautiful way to try new things. And as we like to say here on Don't Be Caged by Your Age, we can do new things. This is so important. And I know, listeners, some of you have a story you want to tell, but you've been afraid to tell it, or you're worried about how you're going to tell it, or you might be taking a memoir class where it's very structured and that doesn't work for you and your beautiful brain. Check out Nina's wonderful website, writing from the top of your head.com, and connect with Nina on Instagram and all the places that she's glowing, because you will feel her kindred spirit. You will feel her joie de vivre, and you will also feel her expertise as a guide for writing. And that's also very important, that you know that you're in good hands with someone who has figured it out and is now a guide for you. Right, Nina?
Yes, that is my honor and my pleasure, and I take it to heart. And also, I would like to add that if you sign up for my newsletter, I do a free 1 hour creativity chats and prompts class every third Wednesday of the month. So you'll get a Zoom link for that. If you sign up, then you could actually experience some of this yourself, and it's free. So, yeah,
Hooray. Oh, that's so wonderful. This has been such a meaningful conversation, Nina. And I know listeners will be tapping into your work and how you serve the world. And I want everyone, please, please, please follow Nina Hart, writing from the top of your head everywhere you can. Sign up for that newsletter. Do yourself a favor and start sharing your thoughts, your words, and writing badly. I just think that's so wonderful to have permission to write badly and create literary misdemeanors. Nothing makes me happier than breaking the rules. So,
of my permission, Andy.
thank
Sure.
you.
Yeah,
And as yeah, I want to remind listeners too that you have so much more to give.
yeah.
So do not let those internalized ageist beliefs prevent you from pursuing new dreams and opportunities, whether you're 60, 65, 85, or like Nina's dad at 96. Your words matter, your thoughts matter, you matter. And one of the best ways to stay engaged is doing some kind of group activity. So why not join a writing group and start tapping into the stories you have to share? Thank you, Nina. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you, Andy. It's been a pleasure, truly, and so much fun. Thank you for everything you're doing in the world.
Oh, thank you. And until next time, listeners, I'm wishing you a delicious day everywhere you glow. Cheers from Boston. Bye, everyone. Mwah. Listeners, I'm so grateful you carved out time to tune in and grab the gems from this delicious conversation. Be sure to hop on over to Don't Be Caged by Your Age on LinkedIn or Instagram to share your thoughts about ageism and unretirement. Because in this space, your age doesn't define you, it refines you. If you are inspired by a story you hear, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe, share, rate, and review the podcast. To receive an alert whenever a new show is posted, please join the Don't Be Caged by Your Age newsletter. Every month, you'll receive links to the podcast and helpful resources for creating possibilities for your unretirement days. Thank you for tuning in. I am so excited to hear how you found ways to thrive after 65. Waving from Boston, cheers.